Kongversation. I need.
Zack Nachbergolf Zahanori Oshni your full Kazifash. If I was named out in the East and Hanoi. This is new Gisi. What?
Hello and welcome to the Kongversation. We're about to start chord. All right, let me just. That's right. It's a DKU Tribunal. I'm Justice Hyle Russell, and who's with me this week?
Jeff. Justice. I don't know if am I a justice? Can I be?
You're Justice.
All right, Justice.
You were not. You were confirmed.
Yeah. All right. We rammed through the confirmation process.
Yeah. So yeah, we're sitting in robes, naked, stark naked.
I'm wearing a thong.
And we're gonna
donkey thong.
I wouldn't want you to strip down beyond your comfort level because I need your head in the game this week, Jeff, because we are going to be judging the fate of several games that have either long been on that bubble of is this game part of the Donkey Kong universe or not? Is it part of the shared rare universe or is it discanon, non-canon, discontinuity? As well as other games that we've long accepted to be part of the Donkey Kong universe, but others have always had a problem with our ruling on that. So we will be hearing those cases again and determining whether or not the evidence still holds up for them to be part of the Donkey Kong universe or the DKU, to keep it short and simple. So the last DKU Tribunal, Jeff, a couple games came up over the course of discussion and calls that we said we would table for this next session. And we will be getting to those. I should also warn the people at home that we will be tackling Super Mario Odyssey tonight. And Super Mario Odyssey, of course, is a game that many people probably just got for Christmas and the holidays, so I don't want to spoil the game for anybody, but we are going to be getting into some intense spoilers, including the end of the game. So because of that, if you do not want to be spoiled for Super Mario Odyssey, do not listen to this episode yet. I cannot stress that enough. So
well, they could
Jeff,
play the episode, but they should just mute it right now. And then when it's over, they can unmute their headphone.
But here's the thing. I'm not going to go into post and tell you when to skip to because that takes too much time, and I, quite frankly, do not have it. I've got to get this episode up. We got to get the season finale up all by the end of the year. So, you know what? Just mute it, and you can roll the dice, skip ahead, and maybe you'll get past the Super Mario Odyssey discussion, or maybe the entire game will be ruined forever for you, and you'll have us to thank. So, whatever the case may be, let's get right into Super Mario Odyssey, the very first game on our docket tonight. Now, Jeff, you actually were not on the Kongversation mini where Cameron, David, and I discussed Super Mario Odyssey, but I know you were listening because you were freaking out during our discussion. You were trying to flag me down and feed me pertinent information, spoiler-heavy pertinent information, but pertinent information nonetheless, because we got into this discussion. Is Super Mario Odyssey part of the Donkey Kong universe or not? And to those of you at home who just cannot fathom how we could even be having this discussion. Is Donkey Kong not in New Donk City? Does Mario not fight him like the days of old? You have to keep in mind what we consider to be the Donkey Kong universe. It is a misnomer. The term Donkey Kong universe is intentionally misleading. Well, it wasn't intentionally misleading, but it sounds better to think it's all part of a master plan. What we mean by Donkey Kong Universe is the Rare Shared Universe, or even the Donkey Kong Country Universe. So any game with Rare's Donkey Kong or somehow spinning out of Rare's Donkey Kong. That is the important caveat there. So, yes, Super Mario Odyssey does potentially or possibly or even likely or absolutely takes place in the same physical multiverse that Donkey Kong games take place in, of course. But is it part of this construct that DK Vine uses to determine whether or not we cover a game or not? That's the question.
Yes. Thanks for the preamble, because I think that's probably the number one thing to get out of the way right away is that, there's Mario. Like the main thing is that we don't cover everything Mario, even though those are probably in the same physical universe. Or multiverse or whatever.
I mean, we're not going to litigate.
Like clearly,
that,
Mario and Donkey Kong are connected. We accept that.
Well, yes. Let's talk about Super Mario Odyssey then. Now that we got, yes, the arcade Donkey Kong physically appears in Super Mario Odyssey, but the big question was raised. Yeah. Okay. So the big question that was raised during the Super Mario Odyssey episode is this, and I thought it was brilliant. Josh Wallen from Off the Geek Critique really was pushing for this. So basically what he said was that in the 2D portions of Super Mario Odyssey, where Mario becomes his sprite pixelated form, the enemies and items that enter that physical space become their 2D sprite selves. And even though you only see Donkey Kong in that physical space, could you not then make the solid assumption that this is either Rare's Donkey Kong, the current modern Donkey Kong, as seen through the filter of this sprite space, or could it even be Cranky Kong, who's gone through this physical space and is being portrayed in his sprite, which would be his original 1980s version, as Donkey Kong Sr. So this was all very, very kind of jaw-dropping stuff when it was posed to us in the Kongversation mini episode. And I don't know, like I said we would just have to table this because I didn't have an answer, and it kind of threw me for a loop because I was going into this saying, no, it's not part of the Donkey Kong universe because our Donkey Kong does not appear in it. And then all of these things were raised to me, and then I said, okay, well, I clearly know jack shit, so let's just table this. And while I was hemming and hawing, Jeff, you were freaking out. You were like, I have a potential answer for this, and I can't tell Hyle because they're spoilers, and I'll just have to like slip this to him underneath the door for a later date. Now, the Geek Critiques Josh Wallen did send a message to us in advance of this episode airing, and I want to read that really quickly if you'll allow it, Jeff.
I will allow it. Gavel, gavel.
All right, it's not leading the witness or anything. All right, whatever. Legal mumbo jumbo
or legal humba wumba.
So this is from Josh Wallen. If you guys block Mario Odyssey, you better have a real good reason. Otherwise, DK Vine is dead to me. Dead, I say. I doubt I'll be able to call in, but anything I said would just be repeats of points I made in this thread. And he links to the DK Vine forum thread. Simply put, that Donkey Kong sprite is more than just a collection of 2D pixels. In universe, he has to be someone real or something tangible. And Occam's razor says someone real, namely post-DKC, Donkey or Cranky, is far and away the best answer. The game must take place years after DKC. There's precedent all over the game for 2D entities transforming into their 3D selves. The festival is taking place in a city full of homages to DKC. Also, this is one of the best games I've ever played, and I just love to see you guys make content about it over the years. Come on, baby. I get the sinking feeling I'm going to want to call in and refute your evidence after I listen. Or maybe you'll do the right thing, and the right thing is capitalized. Do the right thing is capitalized, like the film, and recognize Mario Odyssey as part of the DKU. Either way, it should be a blast to debate and think about this ridiculous universe with you guys. Don't let me down. Winky smiley face emoticon, not emoji, just an old school emoticon. So thank you, Josh Wallen, for that threat, and then warmer message at the end.
I just have one real quick problem with the sentiment expressed there, in that I really don't look at this process as DK Vine blocking something from being DKU. I feel like we don't lay down the hammer and say, no, you don't get in. It's more like the opposite. It's more like we have to let up the gate for something that really compels us to. It's the burden is on Super Mario Odyssey to get in, not for us to let it, to block it out. You know what I mean? It's sort of a semantical thing, but
as tempting as it would be to do a parody song based on the opening track from Paul McCartney's seminal classic album, Wings at the Speed of Sound, I agree with you, Jeff. I mean, look, there are games that we cover as part of this Donkey Kong universe that we would honestly rather not have to. And there are games we would love to cover that, unfortunately, we just can't muster the justification for as much as we would want to. I think Saber Wolf Game Boy Advance is the perennial go-to example when it comes to games that in all likelihood should be part of the Donkey Kong universe, but unfortunately by playing by the rules that we have concocted, and I feel like they're very good rules, and they're rules that we've amended over the years too. We're not afraid to look at it as a living document, but we've got to be fair and just, and that is what the DKU Tribunal. It's not about what we want; it's about what is right by the letter of the law. So, since Super Mario Odyssey is a game I have been like back and forth with, do I want to cover this or not? And I think E3 was the turning point where I was ready to accept it, man. E3, seeing that New Donk City presentation, that whole layout that Nintendo had for their wing in the hall at E3, and I was ready playing the game. It was like, okay, this is really fun. This is the most fun I've had with a 3D Mario platformer since Super Mario 64. I definitely am okay covering this. And then finding out, seeing the footage of quote-unquote Donkey Kong in the game and being like, okay, it's not him. I've made my peace with it. And then suddenly being confronted with evidence, no, it might be him. It's been a roller coaster ride, man, and I know you know something about roller coasters, Jeff.
I do. Yes, my father was a roller coaster. And just for the audience's context, I want this on the record. I love Super Mario Odyssey. It is my favorite Mario 3D platformer. So I wanted that on the record.
It is a game I'm probably not going to get a Switch until deeper into the winter. I was going to get one at the end of the year, and then all these other expenses like, hey, pre-order Sea of Thieves. Hey, get this Sea of Thieves controller that is sexy as hell. Hey, get this ukulele statue. All this shit was thrown at me, and I was like, damn it. So I will get a Switch deeper in the winter. But Super Mario Odyssey, along with a ukulele, will be the first games I purchase for it. So I'm very much looking forward to having it in my gaming library. And from what I've played of it, it is definitely just a blast and a joy to just run around in. It feels like the first Mario game that's just fun to run around in since Super Mario 64.
So that being said,
let's crush
piss people off.
Dreams. No, okay. So Jeff, I'm going to put you on the spot here because you're the one who came to me and said, Hyle, stop. Don't canonize it as DKU. Stop. Because you had a pertinent point to make about the Donkey Kong sprite. So one of the theories I had was maybe this is just a Donkey Kong, like Chuck E. Cheese robot or something, like one of those animatronic deals designed to celebrate the New Donk City Festival. And it's not actually really him. But what sense would that make? And what anecdotal evidence in game would there be to support that? Jeff?
Well, okay, so just for your context here, the point that I brought up to you that day, the one that you keep alluding to, I am not as convinced about myself after having made it the first time, but I'll put it out there. So,
damn it, Jeff! I thought this was going to be an easy episode.
When I thought of it, it came to me. I thought this is a smoking gun. Like this settles the issue. But this has been argued in further detail on the forum, and counter arguments have been made. But here's the context here. So the sprite shows up in New Donk City. The sprite shows up again a second time later in the game, in the post game world, the secret final world level, and it's kind of like a level you go through, sort of a gauntlet of challenges, and it reuses a lot of elements from throughout the game, different characters and gameplay elements, and one of those things being the Donkey Kong sprite shows up again, and from this angle, when you knock it down off the tower, so to speak, but it's not a tower in this case, when you knock it off the screen, unlike the first time you see it, you actually can see it leave the playing space and actually fall out of the 8-bit realm and into the 3D physical space.
Yes.
And in that moment, it does not take a 3D form. Like... which I thought, I mean, there you go. That settles the whole thing. Because every time you see Mario go from 3D to 2D, or you see bullet bills get shot out of cannons in 3D and then enter 2D and vice versa, they're shifting into an 8-bit sprite and then back into a 3D model, and vice versa. Well, as it turns out, I've been made aware of a number of examples in the game where something similar happens, and you can occasionally see 8-bit objects enter 3D and not take on a 3D model and stay in their 8-bit.
Oh my god.
So, not really a compelling argument, so to speak. Tipped Up said in the chat here, other 2D enemies who if a 2D enemy gets killed in the 2D space and falls off camera, it does not take on a 3D model.
Oh wow! Oh my god! So this is no evidence whatsoever.
Yeah, basically, yes, yeah.
So we don't have an answer.
I have answers.
You're telling me
that's not my answer.
Okay.
That's not the reason. That's not the answer.
It's a good thing I'm naked under this robe because I'm sweating like a beast right now. This is, oh my god! I mean, granted, the powdered wig was a poor choice. I thought this time of year it would be insulating, but I didn't expect nor anticipate this level of stress while doing this episode.
Yeah.
That's what the Angry Orchard is for, though. All right. Soothe my soul, Angry Orchard. All right.
Dude, we don't even get paid by Angry Orchard. How sad is that?
Shut up! You're gonna ruin it. You have answers.
Well,
let's hear them, Jeff.
Basically, I have not felt compelled by any argument that has said that this incarnation of Donkey Kong counts as a DKU appearance. Now, let me say why. So, one, is that sprite actually Donkey Kong? We don't have a 100% definitive answer on that. You suggested that you saw it immediately as a sort of Chuck E. Cheese animatronic, and that is the way I saw it right off the bat too. So there's nothing to say it has to be an animatronic. There's no real evidence of that, but there's also no evidence that it's really Donkey Kong. And I think that is a pretty glaring in-universe omission for the context of the situation. If you look at the context of the situation, this is a festival in a city full of people that celebrates Donkey Kong being defeated and and Pauline, their beloved mayor, being rescued. And Pauline is a huge personality. She's a character in the city, and everyone knows about her. And this festival is going on, and apparently Donkey Kong is in the festival, which on its own doesn't really make sense. Why Donkey Kong would show up to participate in this festival? Why would Donkey Kong leave Donkey Kong Island annually to participate in a festival in which he gets knocked off a building and everyone is happy that he loses? For sure, Cranky Kong would not do that. I think it's contrary to his character. But I really don't see any motivation for that to have happened. But more so than that, it is glaringly out of place for that event to take place in the context it is shown to us, and for Donkey Kong to be physically present in that space, and for none of the NPCs in the entirety of New Donk City to ever make reference to Donkey Kong being there for the festival. Pauline doesn't mention that Donkey Kong is here. Mario doesn't make any reference to Donkey Kong. None of the citizens who watch the festival say anything about Donkey Kong. If Donkey Kong himself is up on that tower getting knocked over, it doesn't make contextual sense that there's no acknowledgement of that. Which I don't think is a definitive reason to say it's not Donkey Kong. But I think that my overall point is that you don't need a definitive reason to say it's not Donkey Kong. The game needs to have definitive proof that it is Donkey Kong. You can't. We don't have to prove a negative. The game has to prove a positive.
Go ahead. Okay. All right. Well, if I could be devil's advocate for a moment. The relationship between Donkey Kong and Pauline is not where we left it in 1981 or whatever. It is obviously at an evolved state, considering the Mario versus Donkey Kong series, and considering that a lot of New Donk City seems to be in celebration of the Kongs and Kong culture. And so in that light, I brought this up on the Kongversation mini. One could take away the impression that Pauline and her experiences in the original arcade Donkey Kong game, rather than horrify her and scar her for life, she's actually finds the Kong culture and Donkey Kong Island to be fascinating and endearing, and her getting captured by the irate ape leader of the Kongs at the time only led her to want to study and understand these magnificent creatures even more. So in that light, Pauline is completely cool with the Kongs, and particularly the modern Donkey Kong, who is not the Donkey Kong who kidnapped her, and seems to take it in good stride what his dick father/grandfather perpetuated many decades ago. That's one theory and way of looking at it, and I think the way Nintendo would like us to look at it in these days, where Donkey Kong is portrayed as a heroic figure, and more often than not, he and Mario have a harmonious relationship, except when the plot or conceit of the game demands it.
Right. So how do you react to the statement that it is weird for the context of the situation to be taking place, but nobody to ever make mention of Donkey Kong? And I present that piece of quote unquote evidence, not so much to say, like, see, it's not Donkey Kong, but more to say that if the game wanted us to feel confident, this is DKU, this is Donkey Kong, then it needed that extra piece of dialogue to hammer it in. It needed some piece of any evidence at all that says, "Hey, Donkey Kong's here." Like, but there's none of that. And I feel like it's glaringly absent. It's like it's actually weird for the context of the situation that there isn't that, and it almost makes more sense that it would be an animatronic given that context.
Okay, well, here's a thought experiment for you, Jeff. So let's say this is something we brought up on the last episode of the Kongversation. We brought up Chevy Chase, Maryland. So let's say that the residents of Chevy Chase, Maryland were paid a visit by the actual Chevy Chase. They would not be acknowledging him. They would go out of the way to ignore him. They would be like, "Oh, fuck, that asshole's here." I feel like that could be what's happening in New Donk City. It's a lot of awkwardness. It's like, oh God, this guy's here. Let's just don't make eye contact.
So that makes sense. That's a good answer. My point is that my point isn't that I'm proving that it's an animatronic. That's not the point. The point is that the game doesn't give us enough proof to feel confident that this is a DKU physical character appearance. Now, it's not just the animatronic theory that casts enough doubt to be able to say, well, we can't call this DKU. It's this. So that's just one question in the layer of questions that have to be answered that the game does not answer. One, is it Donkey Kong? Answer, we can't really say for sure. Two, if it is Donkey Kong, is it Cranky Kong or is it Donkey Kong Country era modern Donkey Kong? And if it's Cranky Kong, and either way, it is appearing in the form of a sprite. Now, this is where we need to examine the history of the arcade era in modern times and how we have treated it as the DKU, because the precedent is typically that sprite incarnations of Donkey Kong characters are not DKU. And it's not a timeline thing. It's a art style thing, because we have seen Donkey Kong Jr., for instance, and let me rethink that sentence. So we have seen Donkey Kong characters in a context which implies it being a post-DKC world, and yet because it is in the 8-bit 1980s style game, we did not call that game DKU. Cranky Kong, in my opinion, if he ever shows up in an 8-bit 1983 style or 1981 or whatever style appearance, even if it's in a game that takes place in 2017, a 1981 sprite of Donkey Kong is not enough to make a game DKU, because the DKU has always ignored games that are a homage or continuation of the arcade era, and only when the art style itself coincides with Rare's Donkey Kong, basically, does it have a tie, and is it like Game & Watch Gallery 4? That game is...
Yeah, now, granted...
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, no, you mentioned having a tie. It's an important distinction to make. The arcade Donkey Kong had a tie starting with Donkey Kong 94, which came out mere months before Donkey Kong Country. And it was portrayed that way up through the retirement of the arcade Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr., which happened with Game & Watch Gallery 4. I believe that was their swan song. But that also coincided with Rare's Donkey Kong appearing on the title screen, so that kind of fudges the issue there, just enough that Game & Watch Gallery 4 gets under that gate that was mentioned earlier that we.
So the difference between Game & Watch Gallery 4 being DKU and not was only the artistic representation of Rare's Donkey Kong, implying that the Donkey Kong in the game is Rare's Donkey Kong, or that he's in the game. Right. Now, Super Mario Odyssey is another game that has arcade sprites, but it does not have the Rare artistic interpretation of Donkey Kong. So why would we make the jump to say that that sprite makes a DKU appearance when we did not do that for the other Game & Watch Gallery games? And I'm positive, here's the hypothetical scenario. Imagine a brand new game comes out that is a Donkey Kong arcade homage or sequel that has a Donkey Kong sprite from the arcade game, and it has maybe, it has Mario sprite from the arcade game or whatever. But then you've got some characters show up in there, also in sprite form, that is clearly from the 2017 era, implying that this new game does not take place in the 80s. It takes place now. Would we cover that game? I would say Precedent says we would not cover a game that is an arcade game in arcade sprites, because the Game & Watch Gallery games already did that.
Yes. The major difference with Super Mario Odyssey and New Donk City is that it's loaded with references. Yes, just references, not physical appearances, granted, but references all the same, nonetheless, nevertheless, all the less, to Donkey Kong Country. Whether it be the street signs, the establishments, it is chock full of references to Rare's Donkey Kong, sans Donkey Kong himself in the actual game. It's an interesting paradox. So that definitely kind of puts more weight on the scales of justice for all those people advocating for Super Mario Odyssey to be a game that is part of the Donkey Kong universe. And yes, granted, physical appearances are king. We do not let environments or shout-outs or references to be enough to make a game part of the Donkey Kong universe, much to several people's dismay, I know. But the problem with Super Mario Odyssey, Jeff, is that there are enough minor things that blur the lines just enough that a convincing argument can be made from both directions, and I don't know if either argument outweighs the other. It really is a vexing.
Well, that's
situation.
what I've been saying is the game does not present any foolproof, convincing argument that says we got to cover this, and you might be able to point to some random Rare game that we covered, and you could say, well, look, you guys bent the rules. Well, yeah, it's a Rare fan site. It's not a Donkey Kong fan site. It's a Rare fan site. Get over that. We don't. There's probably a dozen games that have Donkey Kong in the title that we do not cover. If that's not evidence enough of what the game plan is here. So the point is, this is a Mario game. It's a very good Mario game. And in fact, it's a very good Mario game with references to Donkey Kong Country and with very Banjo-Kazooie-esque elements of the gameplay that fans of Rare are going to love. And I advocate every fan of Rare to buy this game and enjoy the hell out of it. That being said, the game has to prove it's DKU. We don't have to prove it's not. And the game does not prove it's DKU. You have to answer the question, is Donkey Kong in the game? We don't really believe 100% that answer. Then you have to answer the question, is that Donkey Kong our Donkey Kong, or is it a old Donkey Kong? We have absolutely no answer there. And then you have to answer the question, if it is our Donkey Kong, or the old Donkey Kong, or any Donkey Kong, does a old-style arcade-era sprite of Donkey Kong count enough to make a game DKU when the site has had a history of specifically not counting sprite incarnations and homages to the arcade era? All of that leaves a pretty gray area to say that there's no definitive way to say this is DKU.
Jeff, I think they want your scalp in the live stream chat right now. I think there are so many people in the live stream chat. Mameche, Tip Top, they want this game to be DKU so bad,
right?
And so let me. I've been playing devil's advocate for you, Jeff, towards you. So let let me give you something that may help support your argument for a change.
Yay!
So, yay! All right, so Ubisoft, they made Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. Obviously, Grant Kirkhope did the music for that. The Rabid Kong was a centerpiece at this year's E3 and part of the marketing campaign. There was a remix of the Armadillo fight from Donkey Kong 64. So it was just chock full of Donkey Kongness, but Donkey Kong himself didn't actually appear in the game. And there's been some arguments. Does the Rabbid Kong count as a transformed version of Donkey Kong? And Ubisoft has actually come out and said, no, it's just a rabbit who ate a banana. So they actually, Ubisoft explained why Donkey Kong did not make an actual appearance in Kingdom Battle. And so what it was Christina Nava from Ubisoft. She was an associate producer of the game. She was asked why the actual Donkey Kong wasn't in the game, and I believe it was Go Nintendo asked her this, and she explained that they did not want to mix Mario and Donkey Kong lore too much, that they were too unique and they needed to be kept kind of at an arm's length. Even though Donkey Kong appears in all of these Mario sports titles, and there is obviously a shared lineage with the arcade Donkey Kong, they still need to be kept at arm's length. It's the same reason why Miyamoto did not want Donkey Kong to appear in, I believe, the second Super Mario Galaxy game. When the team had this idea for Donkey Kong, Miyamoto vetoed it. Same reason why Jungle Beat, Party Monkeys, the Capuchins, did not appear in the original Galaxy because he didn't want to mix those worlds. And I feel like that's why the compromises were made in Super Mario Odyssey, that yes, you can reference Donkey Kong, you can reference his world. Yes, you can have a sprite of the arcade Donkey Kong that Mario fought, but let's not actually mix Donkey Kong with a mainline Mario platformer, because therein lies the path to Donkey Kong series identity finally atrophying and the series becoming merged like we feared earlier this year. And Nintendo and Miyamoto are very vigilant in that they do not want the two series to be merged. Yes, there is an acknowledged shared history there, and the characters do interact in these side games, but in the main titles, you cannot have Mario and Donkey Kong characters actually interacting for the main course, if that makes any sense. As an appetizer, sure. But when it comes time for the entree, they've got to sit at separate tables. So even though that's for another game, it's a game that came out around the same time frame, same development cycle, and it seems to support this idea that they left it intentionally vague. Now, I'm not saying that it couldn't be our Donkey Kong or even Cranky Kong put through this prism, this filter of the 8-bit world, but Nintendo purposely did not want to make a committed answer to that. And quite frankly, they themselves probably don't know or care. What do you think about that?
I think that definitely informs the design decisions in that, they could have just as easily made a big 3D Donkey Kong versus Mario fight, Donkey Kong climbing the side of a building in New Donk City. And in fact, you would imagine that might be the obvious thing to do if you're designing a world such as this one. But it definitely seems intentional that they did restrain themselves, purposefully. And like I said, that's not proof that this is not Donkey Kong. It's not proof that this is definitively not DKU. You can't really prove that with the evidence we have. But the point is that you don't have to prove it's not DKU. It's that the game doesn't offer enough solid proof that it is DKU. that's the way I come at it. And that I know that, like you said, the people listening to this, probably most of the people who tuned into this episode, are tuning in because they disagree with me on that point, and that's okay. That's fine. They can have my scalp, but that's just the way I come at it. Is the game doesn't answer the questions. There's no definitive answer to these questions, and without any answer, we can't call it DKU. I think we by default should err on the side of not DKU, specifically because this is a Mario game. It is a Mario game specifically in this instance of this incarnation of Donkey Kong, referencing Donkey Kong Arcade, which we don't cover. Yes, there's a street sign that says Radley on it and Espresso, and there's Diddy Kong's bagels and shit, but the actual appearance of Donkey Kong is an arcade homage in a Mario game. And why would the DKU, as you know it, as the website we've been following for all these years, why would that website of those personalities cover a Mario game with an arcade homage?
Jeff, intellectually, I'm agreeing with you. I am agreeing with you. This is a bit like Schrodinger's Kong here. We have a game where Donkey Kong appears, and yet Donkey Kong doesn't appear. And it's left intentionally vague. You could almost make the argument that it's whatever your personal canon wants it to be. And I realize that answer isn't concrete enough for DK Vine, and it's infuriating. So I know the bulk of our calls this week had to do with Super Mario Odyssey. So I thought, why not, instead of saving them to the end, why not play all of our calls right now? We're going to hear what other people have to say about this. And then we'll try to reach a verdict about Super Mario Odyssey before moving on. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, that sounds like a plan.
Okay, so let's take the first call. And these all might not be about Super Mario Odyssey. They may be about games we'll tackle later. But at the very least, it will introduce them to the discussion. Okay, so let's hear the first call.
Hey guys, it's Ethan or Ban the Bear here, and I'm calling in for the DKU Tribunal that you will be recording tonight. Anyways, the game I want to touch on is Super Mario Odyssey, which personally I do not think should be DKU. Now, I know there's been lots of discussion about it, and I can see how both sides get into it, mainly with the whole 8-bit mechanic and, how characters come out of it, characters come into it. I think we've all seen the massive discussion that went on for those weeks, but anyways, the thing that really I think it holds it back is the fact we never see either Donkey Kong, the modern Donkey Kong, or Cranky Kong, brought out of that 8-bit dimension and see it in the actual 3D world. And that fact doesn't help that it's the arcade Donkey Kong that we see, which of course we haven't hasn't exactly seen kind representation in the Donkey Kong universe before. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. Really, both sides have their merits, but I'm kind of sticking to my guns on this one and saying it's not DKU. If we saw Donkey Kong, Cranky Kong popping out after Mario beat him, maybe, but I think there's just a little too much leeway, a little too much room in there for it not to be Donkey Kong or Cranky Kong. I feel like there's no concrete 100% cannot be disputed evidence. So yeah, that's my opinion on it. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on the whole thing, and have a good conversation. Have a nice night, day, whenever you're you're on the point tonight. So have a nice night. Bye.
Thank you, Ethan. Well, he hit a lot of the same points we've hit, and he seems to be rocked with the same indecisiveness, and he's leaning towards your opinion, Jeff, where they're just not enough to make a call. But man, it's just the uncertainty. Usually, I feel confident enough in my gut about throwing down the gavel in one direction or another, but my God, this is this is one of the most confusing cases that's ever been brought before the DKU Tribunal. I just don't know. Let's hear what some other callers have to say about Super Mario Odyssey and potentially whatever else.
Hey guys, this is Tipped Up Junior. Sorry my first call is such a disaster. I have my remarks from down the sun. Anyway, don't have much to say about the other games except the subject of Odyssey. Now, if you wanted to just say that KU Dogtown Spray can't make a game DKU and call it a day, I'd actually be okay with that as a strict interpretation of the rules because, I always talk about how sometimes the rules aren't followed with one of our specific games. But anyway, I think to just say that and leave it there betrays a certain cowardice and is very antithetical to what the site would have done with this game 10 or 15 years ago. The fact remains that the implications of this game for the nature of the DKU are enormous, and this is the first time we really had to question the nature of the DKU in almost a decade. In 2006, 2008, we had Yoshi's Island Diaz with Baby Donkey Kong, Brawl, which had the characters as trophies, nuts and bolts with awarded games. And we were presented with these philosophical, existential questions about how the DKU really worked and dimensions and planets and all that. But since then, we haven't really had to think about that kind of stuff. And now we're presented with those things in a mainline 3D Mario platformer. And I think DK Vine underestimated how many millions of eyes were on this game and on New Donk City in particular, seeing all these Donkey Kong references and thinking, holy shit, this is really where the arcade Donkey Kong took place. And I think it's an opportunity that DK Vine failed to capitalize on. And, the fact is people aren't talking about Big Ape City, they're not talking about Goldilocks and Wilbur, but millions of people are talking about Super Mario Odyssey and New Donk City in particular. So, in terms of just DKU status, I think an account still needs to be made for the fact that this could be a physical appearance of an actual Donkey Kong. Now, which Donkey Kong that is up for debate, but I think, like I said, an addendum needs to be added to the rules which could account for a physical appearance of a post-DK sequence or DK where they manifest in an arcade form, which could be what happens in this game. And it's especially ridiculous when Baby DK, Young Conquer, and something like Baby Banjo could make a game DKU. And plus, there's the fact that's already been brought up that every single character in the Unity realm is the real character, and it just seems very obtuse to me to just say, oh, it's an animatronic because that's who's on there the best, and then leave it at that, especially when there's precedent for this kind of thing in the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series. So, I'm not saying this game should clearly be DKU, but it obviously carries a greater weight and significance to DKU lore than almost any game since the buyout. And it feels like if this game came out 10 or 15 years ago, it would dominate the discussion for years and completely rewrite DKU canon, but everyone's focused on things like Ukulele and Sea of Thieves. The Hyle and Chat don't really post anymore, so it's just kind of disappointing. So anyway.
Oh, and there's a little bit more to that call, and because it hit the 3-minute mark, and of course the DK Vine hotline is a cruel mistress, and so it always cuts you off at 3 minutes. So let's hear his finishing thoughts.
If you pick up Junior Slate after all, I was just going to say, I think the Odyssey discussion is far from over. It's one of the most important games to the nature of the DKU ever. It needs to be addressed, and it needs to be looked at. And, yeah. Well, anyway, thanks for having me. See you.
All right. Well, he really likes to lay on the historical importance, the weight of whether or not Super Mario Odyssey should be covered, and he's definitely in the pro camp, yeah. Jeff. As opposed to Ethan the first.
Do you want to hear all the calls, or can I comment on his call?
No, let's discuss his call. What we'll do, we'll talk about if we feel like there is debate to be merited from a call, what a call brings up. Then sure.
So
let's talk about it.
I love that call. It's a good call because it brings up a lot of good points that I want to address. One being, I think that the game's implications on the DKU are massive, even if the game's not DKU. I think the two are not connected at all. And I think that we as you as caretaker of the DKU and you and I as people who are really well versed in the concept are still going to use Odyssey to inform the fanon and the canon.
At the very least, concerning the character of Pauline and the, I guess, in-universe perspective of what happened in those arcade games, at least psychologically, to these characters in the years afterward, definitely Super Mario Odyssey answers that. Now, as Donkey Kong fans, he brought up some very good points about, to the layman, New Donk City is it. New Donk City is where the games took place, the arcade game took place. No ifs, ands, or buts. And that is going to be what millions of people now believe without question for generations. And he's right about that. He is right about that. And, is DK Vine kind of sticking its head in the sand a little bit? Are we pulling an espresso by ignoring that, by not capitalizing on that, by sticking to our guns with Big Ape City and Donkey Kong Land's lore, Donkey Konga 2's lore, games that aren't remembered or won't be held in any high esteem going forward? And unfortunately, it's not our job to kind of parse out what the general populace considers important versus what is actually established in the canon. We can't ignore Big Ape City. Big Ape City is a thing that we can't ignore. That city off the coast of the Congo jungle, seen in Donkey Konga 2, that's potentially reachable by Zeppelin, as seen in Donkey Kong Land. We can't just brush that aside, but we obviously have to reconcile it with New Donk City. And we brought this up a little bit on the Kongversation mini about Super Mario Odyssey. Potential workarounds that New Donk City is a celebratory tribute to Donkey Kong Island, hence the new in New Donk City. Much like a lot of the cities in the New World took on new blank, like New York, or states like New Jersey, were all named after locations in Europe and England and what have you by settlers. So, there are workarounds. Now, does that kind of stuck our thumbs in our ears about what the true intent of New Donk City is? Perhaps. I think, like everything with New Donk City and Super Mario Odyssey's Donkey Kong connections, it is left frustratingly vague by Nintendo, but also vague enough that they didn't trample anything held dear by fans of either Mario or Donkey Kong. So,
and you got to look at it like this: New Donk City is not the first time that a game has made the claim or the implication that this new thing we're showing you is where the arcade games took place, in a way that has contradicted another game having done just that. I think it's happened probably 4 times in the past 30 years, where a new thing has said, this is where the arcades are at. And it is our job as fans to kind of somehow make all of those things make sense. And that's kind of half the fun. But like I said, that doesn't mean that the game is or is not DKU.
I remember when Donkey Kong Country Returns came out. I brought this point up on the Kongversation mini about Odyssey. When Donkey Kong Country Returns came out, everybody was trying to make the argument that the game clearly implied that the arcade Donkey Kong took place in the factory world, which, of course, we reconciled as Creme Croc. And that, you could say Big Ape City still exists, but Big Ape City clearly takes place with it, like, adjacent to or in this factory, and that it's Donkey Kong Country Returns, this is irrefutable evidence And now Super Mario Odyssey has come out, and suddenly now that is where the arcade game took place, irrefutably. And it can't just be whatever the most recent game or the most high-profile game is overrides the canon of things that are already established. Because we are a site that kind of cast a wide net, and that if it is Donkey Kong Universe, or even if it's not Donkey Kong Universe, we do take into account, continuity that is outside the Donkey Kong Universe as well. But, we celebrate the obscure and the forgotten just as much as the big, showy, popular notions that are on everybody's lips. So we're never going to forget Big Ape City. We're never going to forget what Donkey Kong Land outright implied. We just have to reconcile it all. And, quite honestly, had Super Mario Odyssey not gone with the New Donk City name and they called it Big Ape City, that would have still been a wrecking ball to our canon, even more so than New Donk City is. We can work with New Donk City. Had this been Big Ape City, then all of a sudden, all of our assumptions about where Big Ape City was and what it was would have been wrong. And that would have been an even bigger hole that we had to work our way out of. So I am actually thankful it is New Donk City and not Big Ape City. And I think there's plenty to work with there.
So one other thing I want to say is back to his call. Yes. In his call, and this is a totally different point that was brought up in the call, he mentions, if we just said, it's a hard and fast rule, sprite incarnations of Donkey Kong that are, from the Donkey Kong arcade sprite cannot make a game DKU. He said if we just said that outright, he'd be happy with that. Well, that is how I feel personally. But more over, he mentions specifically, you have something like Yoshi's Island DS, Baby Donkey Kong. Baby Donkey Kong is canonically, or at least depending on who you ask, but we typically assume, I don't know, we typically assume that it is, we typically assume that it is canonically our modern Donkey Kong in an infant form. Hence it's got the hair cowl, and it's got the bib that looks like the tie, and it's very much a baby incarnation that at least artistically is designed after the modern Donkey Kong. And yet we call that game DKU. So here's the question is, why is Donkey Kong Jr., when he shows up in a game, not enough to make a game DKU, and modern Donkey Kong is? Now you might say it's about where it takes place in the timeline, but Yoshi's Island DS is also chronologically before Donkey Kong Country. So the rule that says the DKU begins with Donkey Kong Country is not about chronology and place in the timeline. It's about, at least in terms of the precedent of the way we have covered it, by making Yoshi's Island DS a DKU, but not making Game & Watch Galleries 1 through 3, that says to me that the rule is sprites from the arcade do not make a game DKU, because it all comes down to the artistic style. If it's Rare's Donkey Kong, not Rare's Donkey Kong in terms of the timeline, but it's Rare's Donkey Kong in the artistic representation, that is what makes a game DKU, because Baby Donkey Kong clearly is not from our part of the timeline. So to me, that shows the precedent. We just don't cover the sprites. I mean, it's an arcade era sprite. We don't cover the arcade era. The rules say the DKU begins with Donkey Kong Country and specifically follows Rare's revised version of Donkey Kong. Now the rules, this is the most recent write-up of the rules that Matt and I did back in like 2010 or so. It doesn't say it follows the adult version of Donkey Kong Jr. It says it follows Rare's, quote, revised version, unquote, of Donkey Kong. So that to me says revised version. That implies the look, the revised the appearance of it. It's Rare's version of Donkey Kong. It doesn't matter where it takes place in the timeline. An arcade sprite is not Rare's version of Donkey Kong.
Yeah, that's a great point about Yoshi's Island, in that Yoshi's Island DS, in that, yeah, Baby Donkey Kong is clearly designed to evoke Rare's Donkey Kong in a way that the arcade Donkey Kong, no matter what version, if it's actually the sprite or if it's the updated version from Donkey Kong 94, in a way they do not. But
Alf on the forum made a really awesome point, and he walks through this, and I can link it to you. Actually, I would enjoy reading it. But he talks about if you were to take Rare's influence on the Donkey Kong series and erase it from existence, could this incarnation of Donkey Kong still exist? And he follows that example through a few examples. If you followed that as a sort of a rule of thumb, and it produced pretty interesting and I think favorable results. And it says, so if you took Rare's influence on the Donkey Kong series and erased it from existence, Baby Donkey Kong would not exist in the way that he looks. Whereas if you did the same thing with Super Mario Odyssey, it would not change the Donkey Kong as it appears in that game. And I think that is a very easy to follow way of looking at it, of why we would follow Rare's games but not the arcade era games. So I mean, that to me was a really compelling argument.
Yeah, it's the Marty McFly fucking his mom effect. If he went back in time and had sex with his mother and it erased him and his siblings from existence. Wait, what was the point I was making again?
That Marty's mom is hot,
I just,
and we all can agree with that.
Yeah. That being said, where was I again? Okay,
I think we could probably look at some more calls, or unless you have a point.
Yeah, let's take some more calls. Thank you so much for the call, Tip Top, and we definitely are, but we will consider what you had to say in our final verdict. All right.
Hello, dear friend Tony, the Mitch, or whatever other thing to call me. I mean, it doesn't really matter because I have like 4 different variations of the same username. Kinda. It's Tony. His best friend, the Mitch. Anyway, I'm frustrated because you guys still haven't made the Lunchables games DKU, and apparently the Kirby games still isn't DKU either, which I should say both of these games should be DKU because why not? Okay? The thing is, right, these games are like have stuff in them and make them DKU. You know, Banjo-Kazooie, it's in the title, Banjo-Kazooie. You know, there's no excuse. If you don't make it DKU, I'm going to drop my Patreon. I'm going to convince everyone else to drop their Patreon pledge. And you'll be broke, Hyle. It's a threat. An actual threat. I will drop my Patreon if you do not, in fact, make Banjo-Kazooie Lunchables, I forgot what it's called, DKU. Now, if you do make it DKU, I'll sweeten the deal, and I'll take you to Disneyland if you're in California. And Disney California Adventure, so you could ride Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, which is everyone's favorite ride, but we won't go to Pixar Pier, the worst place on the planet, if that isn't open by the time we go. Which hopefully it is not open because Pixar Pier is, in fact, the worst thing possible. With that said, Kirby game, it says Donkey Kong. It's funny to think Donkey Kong's off screen. Just do it.
Okay. Thanks, Mitch. Tony, whatever you want to be called. So not really anything to say about Super Mario Odyssey. His main sticking points are on 2 games that are further down our docket. He really wants to die on this Lunchables game, Sword or Hill or whatever it is that people die on these days. We'll get to that, I promise, Mamechi. And I believe that what you were threatening though is extortion. In a legal sense, and I'm not sure if we can then use your testimony in court, but we'll we'll have to wait and see about that. We'll have to see what the jury has to say. Anyway, I don't know anything about legal terms or I flunked out of law school in that I started the application and I got bored and I walked away. So thanks for the call, and we will be discussing both Kirby Robobot and Lunchables Banjo-Kazooie missions or whatever the fuck it's called. We'll discuss those a little bit, I promise. All right, let's take the rest of our calls.
Hey, DK Vine, Karate Joe here. I'm here to talk about the DKU Tribunal and specifically Kirby Planet Robobot. I want to clear up some things. First of all, it does not say amiibo. When you scan a Donkey Kong amiibo into Planet Robobot, it says, and I quote, inhaled Donkey Kong and copied the fighter ability. So that goes in favor of being a DKU game. However, when you scan an amiibo from the Animal Crossing series, it says, and I quote, inhaled Animal Crossing series and copied the leaf ability. So what I think this means is that, unfortunately, it is referring to the amiibo, not the actual physical character, because there's no character named Animal Crossing series, unless it's inhaling the whole series, which, if you want to bend the rules, could make Planet Robobot DKU. If anything, I'd want it so that we could have some cool neon avatars. But if we were going strictly by what the Donkey Kong universe is, I think that rules it out. It does not state it's an amiibo, but the other amiibo imply that it is talking about it. So that's my thoughts on Planet Robobot. That's all I have to say. Thank you. Oh, and talk about Snake Pass.
I believe he called in again, so let's see what he followed up with.
Hey, it's Karate Joe again. Hello, DK Vine. I'm just gonna rapid fire the other ones because I'm bored. So Super Mario Odyssey, I think, would be very cool if it was DKU, but I think things are stacked against it since there's no physical appearance of, the rare version of Donkey Kong. So, the rare references in the street signs help it, but I think, based completely on physical appearance, that rules it out. Smash Brothers, I think, should be DKU, because that's the only way I'm ever going to get a Rhythm Heaven avatar. Lunchables Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts Aerial Challenge should be Donkey Kong Universe, because that's fun. Super Mario Maker, no, because that's a costume. And Snake Pass, yes, because Noodle is Trowser's distant relative, and that qualifies for the use of the Pepito Kong rule. Thank you. And don't worry, David Wise is a Rare developer, so he makes the game Rare by default. And that's all I have to say. Thanks. You don't have to talk about the Snake Pass. You could just make it DKU for me.
Well, we won't be talking about Snake Pass on this episode. I think Snake Pass is a pretty open and shut case.
Can I just say, straight for the record, that the Pepito Kong rule just will not ever be used? People just need to accept that.
The Pepito Kong rule... Yeah, it was like a very, very narrow time frame in which that rule made sense, and I'm not sure it ever will make sense again. But people get hung up on the fucking Pepito Kong rule. Like, I swear to God, that's gonna that and Lord Harry are two of the biggest things I regret ever coining in my too long life. And I will never live them down. So, anyway, yeah, wow, okay. So, in the interest of hearing out Snake Pass, I will put it on the docket for the next tribunal.
Okay. We can probably cover that one in about 10 seconds and then move on.
Yeah, I really don't see what case there is to be had for Snake Pass. But you know what? we'll put it on the docket. I'm writing it down right now, and that way, whenever we announce a new DKU tribunal next season, everybody who wants to argue for Snake Pass can have all of their arguments, their legal defenses ready to go, and you can wow us on the stand. But until then, nah. All right, we have one more call, and I think it's from a person who already called in. Try to guess who that is. Well, it's Mumechi. Here we go.
It is me, Tony, once again, your friend, Mumechi. I have a second call that I just thought about, and this should be DKU. Now, if you remember, at E3, there was, in fact, the Sea of Thieves band. I forgot his names already. Sorry. The Skull Diggers or Skull Duggers, or I don't remember. But these guys are the best Sea of Thieves characters in all technicality. They are Sea of Thieves. They play Sea of Thieves. It's like that Udon City guy who you met at E3, except not terrible. Remember, that guy broke character like 6 times with you guys, and that just bothered me intensely. Bad move. But anyway, these guys, saw them at Disneyland a week or 2 ago. I saw them at Disneyland. They were playing music. People liked it. Now, you know what this means. They were playing it at Pirates of the Caribbean in the New Orleans Square area of the park. While I was having my pommes frites, which is French fries in New Orleans, and Monte Cristo sandwich. Now, is Sea of Thieves going to be connected to the Pirates of the Caribbean universe in some capacity? Because remember, Captain Jack Sparrow is in fact in the ride. So, what do you think about this? I know that the pirates might not be in the Caribbean, which they aren't in Sea of Thieves, most likely, but it could be that in the rare, in Europe, there's these pirates, okay? Sea of Thieves, and in the Caribbean, it's Pirates of the Caribbean, but it's the same universe. So I'm just trying to say, is it, in fact, the same? I think Sea of Thieves, I think Pirates of the Caribbean should be part of the DKU. Okay?
No.
I'm sorry. I stopped paying attention like halfway through that. Did he what was he arguing for? Something about a Monte Cristo sandwich?
He said that the Pepito Kong rule should not be applied, and that Lord Harry is stupid.
What? Okay. So something about the Skullduggers, the Sea of Thieves band that's used to promote Sea of Thieves at all Southern Californian functions, like E3 and Comic-Con. No, they're not. They're promotional materials, unless they. Okay, here's the thing: they could appear in Sea of Thieves, but as the characters of the pirate band they portray, that has no relation to the pirate band they portray in Disneyland, which is a different pirate band.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. And you can't retroactively make something DKU, it would just be a crossover. So even on the off chance that some Pirates of the Caribbean video game had some sort of crossover connection with Sea of Thieves, that would not make Pirates of the Caribbean, the films, or the ride DKU. But I guess I was paying attention. Thanks for the call, Mamechi. All right.
So Super Mario Odyssey.
So Super Mario Odyssey, we kind of got away from Super Mario Odyssey there, but Jeff, I'm flummoxed. I see valid points on both sides, and I don't know what to do. And I know how you're going to vote, But part of me wants to just vote for a mistrial because I feel like we don't have enough to go on.
Well,
yet.
I don't. Okay, so I feel like that's kind of a cop out because if you don't have enough to go on, that means no. That's the way I'm coming at it, and I feel like
Okay.
everyone is looking at that attitude and saying like, oh, well, just wait until the player's guide comes out, and I'm going to look at all the little juicy quotes and show that they're proof that it's referencing Donkey Kong because of the way it's worded.
Well, the player's guide is out. The
or
player's
whatever,
guide is out. Has nobody done that?
Supporting material that comes out. I don't think there is evidence in existence that makes the game DKU. It's not like I'm waiting on more evidence. I've played the game forwards and backwards. So I have my answer. I hope you ruminate on it and come up with an answer, but I don't think that an answer is going to come to you. The answer is just not there. And if the answer is not there, for me, it defaults to no.
Well, would you not say, though, that if the developers gave a more substantive answer in interviews, then that's basically what we're waiting for, like the associate producer from Ubisoft who talked about Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, the definitive statements from Ubisoft that no, it's not Donkey Kong, that's the Rabbit
right.
Kong.
So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, if we didn't have that, people would still be arguing for that game.
Well, here's the point: is that without that, the answer is no, and then if that comes out, the answer can change. But right here, here today, the people need an answer, and that answer can change if new evidence comes out. That's the way this has always gone. Like Viva Pinata was definitively not DKU until it was. You know what I mean? Like there was an answer, and then the answer got changed. That can happen. But
that
as of
true.
today, what is the answer?
Well, based on all of the empirical evidence and based on, most importantly, historical precedent, today the answer would have to be no. But please keep in mind, everybody at home who is advocating for this game, if you can find more evidence, if you can find developer intent, if you can get quotes, then that answer can and will absolutely change. But for now, yes, if we have to have a ruling, then the answer is no. It's not DKU by a hair. Now that doesn't mean that Super Mario Odyssey cannot influence Donkey Kong Universe lore. That we will not take it into account. But as far as being a game that's part of the core of what we can, and it's an honorable mention, sure. But as far as what we actually cover, then at this point in time, we have to say no. But that is with a lot of mental anguish and a lot of indecisiveness, at least on my end. And I am open to my opinion being changed.
Well, and just so that it's on the record, I also am open to my opinion being changed. I know that I'm the one of the two of us that has kind of set my heels in and presented an actual argument for one side. But
no, I'm putting this all on Jeff Onan. This is all Jeff Oden's fault, everybody. I wanted it to be DKU. I'm the good guy here.
That being said, that if the evidence were to change in a way that would compel you to change your mind, it probably would have also compelled me to change my mind. So I think as of now, any word of God, I mean, I think the word of God that came out on Raving Rabbids informs this game also further to the negative. And unless something comes out from these developers that talk about, Donkey Kong's place in the game and in a way that is specifically canon oriented, that it implies his physical presence, even then, I would be hard pressed to accept that a sprite incarnation of Donkey Kong can be called DKU, because the precedent just isn't there. That it's not about It's not about the thing that makes a sprite Donkey Kong not DKU has nothing to do with it taking place in the 80s. It has to do with the fact that it's not Rare's revised version of Donkey Kong. And even if this was Rare's Donkey Kong disguised as a sprite, that's not Rare's revised version of Donkey Kong in a artistic sense. I don't know, man. I don't know. I feel pretty strong on this one so far.
The references are nice, like, having a misspelled Radley Street. That's great. That's great. I love it, but unfortunately,
yeah. I mean, I love New Donk City and the game itself. I've beaten it all the way through, so it's awesome. Definitely play it if you love Rare games. Feel pretty strongly so far that it's not DKU. And the same can be said for Snake Pass. If you love Rare games, play Snake Pass. You're gonna like it. It's pretty rad, but it's not DKU.
Oh yeah, we'll save Snake. We'll give Snake Pass its legitimate chance next DKU Tribunal. Let's talk about Kirby, Jeff. What is
it's called Kirby Robobo. It's Kirby Planet Robobot. There's only 2 B's.
Planet Robobot. Okay.
Right? I think that's right. I'm pretty sure that's right.
I don't even know. I've got some Angry Orchard in me, so the game can be whatever it wants to be. It can be, so Kirby Planet Robobot. What is the underlying issue here? Why is this Kirby? Look, we just said a Super Mario game with a blatant Donkey Kong themed world is, at least at this point in time, not Donkey Kong universe. Why would we go to a Kirby game, a goddamn Kirby game, and ask this question after striking down such an ironclad defense in Super Mario Odyssey? Jeff, what is the issue here?
Well, so you've got Kirby, and Kirby eats stuff, and when he eats it, he gains powers from the creature or the mook that he ate. He ate him up, and in Kirby Planet Robobot, when you scan an amiibo, the game pops up a little message, and you gain a power up from that amiibo, but it has some flair to it. There's a little bit of flair. In that it says that Kirby swallowed up that character and then gained the power up because they swallowed the character. So the idea being that no, you don't ever see Donkey Kong in the game, but when you put a Donkey Kong amiibo on the 3DS, it says that Kirby inhaled Donkey Kong, and that is why he got the power up.
And if you'll remember, this was brought up on the last DKU
and
Tribunal,
I won't remember but I'll believe you anyway.
Well, all right. Well, we talked about amiibo functionality and how amiibos, the intent and what they are can vary depending on what the actual game implies. We brought it up with the Mini Mario and Friends game. That was a successor to the Mario versus Donkey Kong series, but that only physically portrayed mini versions, the wind-up toy versions of the characters, but they were scanned in using amiibos of the actual character, with the implication therein being that the physical characters were what set these wind-up toy versions of them off, and that the amiibos, in this sense, represented the physical characters, and it was a literal physical object interacting with the electronic gaming world, as seen in another Donkey Kong Universe game, Mario Party E, the famous e-reader card deck game that used the e-reader device to actually have interactive video games on the Game Boy Advance, mini games, that is, on the Game Boy Advance. So there is precedent for both the physical interacting with the electronic and an amiibo representing an actual character. So in this case, the game really tips its hat and says, Kirby just swallowed fucking Donkey Kong. Not a Donkey Kong amiibo, not a statue of Donkey Kong, not some sort of Donkey Kong totem, but the genuine article. He swallowed Donkey Kong the gorilla whole. And in this case, Donkey Kong the gorilla, even though you did not see him on the game screen, your amiibo, that was Donkey Kong. And Karate Joe called in and said, hold on. What about when it says for the Animal Crossing, it specifically doesn't reference a character. It says you swallowed the Animal Crossing series. So that's a point to consider. But Jeff, I want to hear what you have to say, because you and I thought we would be on opposing sides of this, but we both agreed that the Mini Mario game was Donkey Kong Universe. So you were the author of a decision, the co-author of a decision that will weigh very heavily on this one.
Okay, so I have to preamble this thought, and that is, so I'm always talking about precedent and how a previous decision kind of informs this one. That being said, I really don't remember talking about Mario Amiibo or Kirby Amiibo. Like, I 100% don't remember my thought process there or having that discussion. So, everything I'm about to say is kind of like a new thought, because I don't remember the first thought.
You're one of the best legal minds of your generation,
I know.
Jeff.
It's all the Angry Orchard is starting to eat away at my brain.
No, that sounds like sniffing glue would cause that problem.
Well, okay, I guess I have heard you're not supposed to mix Angry Orchard with amphetamines, but, you know, what do doctors know? So, the way I'm thinking of this, I'm kind of grappling with the thought here is, clearly Kirby's in-universe, action here is interacting with Donkey Kong, but does that mean that Donkey Kong is physically present in the game? I'm curious about how we answer that question, because yes, Donkey Kong influenced Kirby's adventure, but if it happens off screen, and at what point do you say something that is implied in the physical presence of the room is DKU, or do you, at what point do you say something, that if you hear reference to the guy being down the hall, but you never see him or hear him, that doesn't make it DKU. Obviously a blurb of text or someone's artifact, like their piece of clothing or their painting on the wall, those don't make something DKU. So the physical presence of the character in the scene is important. I'm not sure how I interpret Donkey Kong's physical presence in this scene. So Donkey Kong is physically present just outside of the game, at least if you're talking about a physical realm, as in Donkey Kong physically is a toy here, and the game is inside the screen, so they're kind of touching. He's right next to the game. It's like cling, like you're touching him. I don't know. Is he physically there? Is he in that game, Hyle? What do you think? I don't.
Well, Jeff. Jeff. You have to think 3-dimensionally here.
I don't tend to,
or 4-dimensionally. You have to think 4-dimensionally. So, Donkey Kong the amiibo represents Donkey Kong the character. Ordinarily, it would just be a toy. Like if I'm walking around with a Donkey Kong amiibo, be it the Donkey Kong amiibo from Smash Brothers, the Donkey Kong amiibo from the Super Mario line, or the Skylanders Donkey Kong, be it regular one or Dark Donkey Kong, whatever the case, and ordinarily that's not Donkey Kong, it's just an amiibo, a plastic hunk molded in the shape of Donkey Kong. But okay, we've already established that in one case, the Mini Mario game, that Donkey Kong can physically represent the actual character of Donkey Kong due to the implicit nature of the game. The same way that Donkey Kong playing card represented physically Donkey Kong due to the nature of Mario Party E. So, that being said, what Kirby Planet Robobot, what this Kirby game suggest is that Donkey Kong is just off the game screen, in this case being represented by your amiibo, Kirby inhales Donkey Kong, and when he inhales him, Donkey Kong physically enters the space that the game screen is representing, and Donkey Kong is inside Kirby's mouth. Kirby then swallows Donkey Kong, much like he will do in a Smash Brothers game from time to time, and then shats Donkey Kong out his backside, and then Donkey Kong is shat back out into the space that's represented by where your amiibo is. So his actual interaction with the game screen is all but a brief moment in time. But the game says that, yes, that amiibo that I, the video game, just interacted with is, in fact, Donkey Kong.
So here's a... Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay. No. I mean, I was just going to go round and round with that same point using different words to help make it sound like I had more to say. But, really, I don't.
So, okay. So I get the... clearly the implication is that he enters the physical space mainly because Kirby is swallowing something. So, yeah, he's got to be swallowing Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
Donkey Kong is inside of there. That being said, so like we said, different games use amiibos in different ways, and they can imply what the amiibos in-universe implication can be different from game to game. And lots of amiibos in lots of games, you click it on there, and it just gives you some kind of power-up. In fact, probably most games which use amiibos, you click it on there, it gives you a power-up. This one does exactly that, but it adds a little bit of flair, some flavor text, which is nice. That being said, I think it's a pertinent point that Donkey Kong being swallowed by Kirby is an event that we've already seen before in canon, in the Smash Brothers games, in the Smash Brothers games. Do we have to do that today? Because that seems like probably an hour-long discussion. Okay, well, so we've seen what happens when Kirby swallows Donkey Kong, and that is that Kirby gains a power-up, being that he gains Donkey Kong's wind-up punch, and he gains Donkey Kong's hair, which is cool. And yet in this game, when he swallows Donkey Kong, that's not what happens. Something else happens. He gets a fire power-up. Which to me kind of says your amiibo gave you a random power-up in the same way that it does in many amiibo games, and they just kind of dressed it up with a sort of fluffy flavor text. But it can't be the real truth, because we know what happens when Kirby eats Donkey Kong, and it's not that. And the fact that when you swallow an Animal Crossing character, it says Kirby swallowed or Kirby inhaled Animal Crossing series, which is not any thing to swallow. It's not a thing that you can swallow and eat. So I think, to me, it's more like you gave the game you gave Kirby from your amiibo a nondescript power-up with the flavor of swallowing Donkey Kong in a purely kind of decorative way that's not a canon way. Not you can't swallow Animal Crossing series, can you?
No, but I could also see the case being made that for an Animal Crossing amiibo,
it's Villager.
I don't know.
Villager is what. Oh wait, but it's not just Villager. There's all kinds of Animal Crossing characters in amiibo.
Yeah.
So I like it. My first thought is, yeah, he swallowed Donkey Kong, but I mean, it's the Animal Crossing thing that I'm hung up on.
That is true. That is a sticky wicket. And I was just thinking, well, that's just Villager. I was where your headspace was for a second. I was like, well, that's just Villager, because Villager isn't really a defined character outside of the context of Smash Brothers. From an Animal Crossing context, who the fuck is just Villager? But then, yeah, there are lots more Animal. I don't know.
To me, I'm almost leaning towards. So okay. I mean, isn't there there's Legend of Zelda game where you put amiibo there and you just get it's Hyrule Warriors. Hyrule Warriors, you get the amiibo, and if you put any kind of amiibo there that's not Legend of Zelda amiibo, like Donkey Kong, it gives you a power up, right? But the game's not DKU because I mean Donkey Kong didn't interact with that world; it just gives you a power up. And I'm feeling kind of like the Kirby game is doing the same thing. It's just giving you a power-up. And it dressed it up with a little nice flavor text that could have made it DKU, but the fact that Animal Crossing series is not the name of a character means that really it's just the power-up thing. It's not Kirby didn't really eat Donkey Kong. Your amiibo just gave you a random power-up in the same way that it happened in the Legend of Zelda game. And the game kind of just made a fun joke out of it.
And the fact that it clarifies this other amiibo that's being scanned in shows that the language, despite it being sloppy for characters like Donkey Kong, the clear intent there can then be applied to all of the amiibos. At the very least, there's enough uncertainty there that, much like Super Mario Odyssey, we just can't have enough evidence to say definitively whether it's DKU or not. And I was ready to grant this DKU status. You talked me out of it.
Yeah. So
once again,
can I just say, I'm accepting hate mail. That's cool. And you all know where to find me. Yeah, I think that if Kirby really ate Donkey Kong, he should get the wind up punch power up, I think. But he just gets a generic fire power up. And that's the same with every amiibo in the game.
Isn't it random? I mean, it might be the.
I don't know.
I did minimal
I thought it was
research
something
for this,
specific for each one, but they're just like generic ones that are in there already. Maybe this just shows the audience that we really haven't done our research. I'll just say this right now. I didn't play this or any Kirby game except for maybe once. But
you've never played a Kirby game in your life?
I've played a couple. I played the Game Boy Color one.
Kirby's Dream Course, bitches. Man, that's my favorite Kirby game.
I like the one. So I played one. It's black and white. It's on the Game Boy, and there's a tree that spits at you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I like that one. That's probably the best one. All right. So what do you want to say for Kirby Planet Robotnik? What you want to say? Not DKU.
I want to say that this one needs more evidence, man. This one needs further consideration. I was not told before I came on the episode to research a Kirby game. And if I was, maybe I'd have a really definitive answer right now, but I really don't. And granted, I've also been told that we discussed this once before and specifically said we were going to put it off until today. So that's on me.
Yeah, that is entirely on you. No, I was all ready to grant this DKU status based on what evidence I thought we had. The Animal Crossing thing definitely made me rethink things, and
Mitch is in the chat just going on about the e-reader. Mario Party E came out before I was born. I never played that game in my life, so I can't comment on Mario Party E.
Wait, what? Jeff, you're what, like 14?
I'm 7 years old. I'm 7 years old.
Okay.
No, I literally. So I'm sure Mitch that Tony is making a good point about how this somehow ties into Mario Party E. I literally don't know anything about Mario Party E or the Kirby franchise, so maybe I'm not the best judge to be weighing in on this, which is the only reason I'm not giving I could throw out this is a not DKU until I change my mind later kind of answer. But no, I don't want to throw out any answer right now. I really don't.
Wait, so you want a mistrial?
On this one, because I haven't done any research. Mario Odyssey,
God.
I have been sweating over Mario Odyssey for over a month, 2 months or what. It's like 2 months now. And Kirby has not been on my mind, and I don't have an e-reader, so I don't know, Hyle. This is here's where I'm starting to get frustrated. How come you can't come in on one of these and say, I feel strongly, Jeff, and I get to be the one that's not sure.
Oh, I feel strongly about some of the later ones. This one, I was on the fence. I could go either way on this, and quite honestly, like I wanted to say it was DKU. I was ready to say it, and then you brought up very excellent points about Kirby swallowing Donkey Kong, and then I have to admit I was a little aroused. But then after that passed, I started to think more clearly, and I started to think, well, you're right. If he did swallow Donkey Kong, there is an implied canon effect. And granted, there's always workarounds for that, so we can't get too hung up on that. But then the Animal Crossing character, it pretty definitively states that it is not a character. It is just this thing from the Animal Crossing series, this trinket.
So, to me, the Animal Crossing instance invalidates really any kind of canon positive that we can take from the flavor text. It makes the flavor text across the board unreliable,
right,
as a source of canon.
And considering the text was all we had to go on here,
yeah,
the fact that all of a sudden the entirety of it is now thrown into question, and it's an unreliable narrator. That means that we just have to, I think, have a ruling, at least for now, that it's not DKU. And I'm sorry, Mamechi. I really am sorry. I know how much you wanted Dr. Robotnik's
mean machine.
Yeah. How much you wanted to be DKU, but I mean, there's just not enough to go on here. I wanted Kirby to swallow Donkey Kong all night long, but until now, just gonna have to happen in our dreams or Smash Brothers. So, yeah, not DKU. I'm calling it. Well, here's another game Amechi was very invested in. Lunchables Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts Aerial Challenge. What the ever-loving fuck is this? This is something we've talked about on the Kongversation before, and I believe it's something Mamechi has called in about before. So this is a Flash game that was designed, I think it was on the Lunchables site. It's now archived elsewhere, but it was essentially a Flash game designed to promote Nuts and Bolts back in 2008. And the best way to describe this is it's a Flash game where you control what appears to be a miniature Nuts and Bolts style vehicle contraption that you build. Very rudimentary, not as complex as what you get in Nuts and Bolts. And then you fly it upwards up through these kids' home. So you fly it through the kitchen, you fly it through the attic, you eventually fly it over the house and even into outer space. And it kind of reminds me a little bit. Jeff, I don't know if you ever played the game Monster in My Pocket for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Since you're 7 years old, I doubt it. But what
is a Nintendo Entertainment System?
Fair enough. So Monster in My Pocket, it was what came before the GameCube. Well, what came before the GameCube. So Monster in My Pocket was based on the toy line of the same name, and very popular for a very brief window of time in the early 90s. I think it was more popular in England than it was here in America. But they were basically like monster versions of the muscle figurines from the 80s. And there's a Nintendo Entertainment System platformer, kind of a Double Dragon-esque side-scroller, where you could control either the vampire or the monster, aka Frankenstein's monster. And the premise was that you were this miniaturized monster that went through these regular suburban locations. So you would go through a home, you would go through a sewer, go through a construction site, etc., etc., and everything would be huge. And you would be this miniaturized creature fighting other miniaturized monsters along the way. So that's what Lunchables Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts Aerial Challenge reminds me of. And Banjo and Kazooie do physically appear on the title screen, helping. And actually, when your vehicle is destroyed, I believe they parachute out of the vehicle, even though this is some sort of miniature contraption in this giant world. It's not like Banjo-Kazooie couldn't be miniaturized when they've got shaman friends, whatever. The question
Kyle,
is,
I was looking at pictures of Monster in the Pocket NES game.
Yeah.
And you could have really hit home the point you were trying to make a lot quicker if you had just said, like, Toy Story. Everybody knows Toy Story.
Well, what about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids?
Yeah, that too. So I don't know why we had to bring up the Monster in the Pocket, but you do you. You got me looking at it, which is, I guess, that's something. So you've educated me.
Yeah, no. It was actually
it reminds me of the Toy Story Genesis game I used to have. You run around like the kitchen and stuff.
Okay. See, I was just speaking from my perspective, my knowledge base. Yours differs, obviously, but I actually really like Monster in My Pocket. I beat it. Beat the Warlock at the end of the game. It was pretty fun. But anyway, it wasn't a great game, but I mean, it was pretty fun for what it was at the time. And it was playable, which is better than most licensed NES games. So all that was just said because this is very much along the same lines. You're flying this miniature nuts and bolts vehicle through a suburban household, a home. And you have to evade all of these obstacles, including blatant product placement for Lunchables. These kids fucking love their Lunchables. These three children, I don't even know. Like they remind me of the Burger King Kids Club. If you remember those characters, like they're like too cool for school. They got they're like wearing like red jumpsuits or something. There's a blonde kid. There's like a blonde boy with kind of like spiky Jimmy Neutron-esque hair, and then there are two girl characters. One of them has blue pigtails. I'm not even sure if it's supposed to be blue hair, if it's like comic book hair, but anyway. Whatever they may be, if they're like Lunchables mascots, they might have been the Lunchables mascots at the time. I really don't know, but I think they are the protagonists of the game, and because they build the vehicles that Banjo and Kazooie, the miniaturized Banjo-Kazooie, pilot through their house or their clubhouse or whatever the goddamn fuck this is. I don't even know. This is gibberish. So the question that has long been posed to us, Jeff, is this an actual video game? This was a Flash game, and
I love that question.
Yeah, I mean, does this count as a video game, or is this just promotional chaff? Is this no different than the Color a Yoshi thing like that used to be on Nintendo of America's website? Surely you don't consider that a video game. Super Mario Wiki doesn't consider that a video game. So I believe the full title is actually Oscar Mayer Lunchables presents Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts Aerial Challenge. So we have one game in the Donkey Kong universe that I think people lean on when they try to say this is Donkey Kong universe, and that is Donkey Kong Country Barrel Maze. It was a game designed in 2003 for the now defunct Candy Stand website. I think it's defunct. I think it actually just changed ownership and names, but the actual site is still in some form of existence. The Candy Stand website was a bunch of, I think in this case it was Shockwave Games, or maybe it was Flash. I don't even remember, but probably Flash. I forget which candy company owned it, but it was designed to promote them. But other companies would come to Candy Stand with licensed properties and put video games on there designed to promote something they had going on. So Donkey Kong Country Barrel Maze was used to promote the Game Boy Advance remake of Donkey Kong Country. Very odd that they would do it, but whatever. The fact is, though, that the Donkey Kong Country Barrel Maze game did not actually make reference to the Donkey Kong Country Game Boy Advance remake whatsoever. So it was more of a standalone than anything else. And it also infamously seemed to have an ESRB rating, in this case, rated E by the ESRB. So Oscar Mayer Lunchables presents Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts Aerial Challenge. Doesn't necessarily have an ESRB rating. What it does have is in the lower center right of the screen, where it explains to you what the game is and how you play, and then actually it stays on there during the duration of gameplay. It says Banjo-Kazooie, registered trademark symbol, Nuts and Bolts trademark symbol, only on Xbox 360, ESRB rating, everyone 10 plus, with comic mischief and cartoon violence. And then there's a button you can go to, you can click it, and then you can watch the trailer for Nuts and Bolts. So I think there was no actual ESRB rating for this. They just gave a lot of promotional jibber jabber for Nuts and Bolts. I mean, this is in the name itself. This is clearly designed, and the actual content of the game designed to promote Nuts and Bolts. The question, though, is if Donkey Kong Country Barrel Maze can count, why cannot this count as a Donkey Kong Universe game? Do Banjo-Kazooie not appear? Yes, and you can even let them choose which vehicle you use. So, what is the big difference between Barrel Maze and Aerial Challenge? And Jeff.
No, go ahead. No, I want you to finish your thought. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to let you just trample everybody's dreams yet again. But I don't know, Jeff, because quite honestly, the so-called ESRB rule was never something I was personally invested in. That was more Chad McCanna's bag back in the day. And I've always been a little bit more open and lenient towards hearing people out, because the ESRB is really only a construct in America. And I think as games and the concepts of games evolve further going into the future, it's going to be less and less of a relevant thing. You know, you have the PEGI rating, sure, but you know, I wouldn't necessarily say the ESRB rating is what makes Donkey Kong Country Barrel Maze an actual video game. I think it definitely lends some credence to that weight, but it's not the only thing that it has going for it. So the fact that it was actually a licensed game on CandyStand.com, endorsed by Nintendo, definitely helps. Now, would this not be the same thing, Jeff?
Well, first, I'm not married to the idea that Donkey Kong Country Barrel Maze is DKU. I mean, it is DKU.
Fucking it for the last decade and a half. So
I mean, it is DKU, but it's not a compelling thing to me that it is DKU.
Oh, it's very compelling for me, baby.
Okay, so the only reason I say that is this. Okay, here's my brain. I don't see the compelling difference between what makes Barrel Maze more real and official than this. I do see it as more legit than Aerial Challenge, but I can't really put a quantifiable thing. The ESRB rule was a really easy, quick, quantifiable thing, but I also agree that it's not a very relevant thing. That could be increasingly irrelevant, and I don't want to make that the thing that makes something more legit than the next thing. But there is something about Barrel Maze that feels more legit than this, and I don't know how to quantify that. But
the level of polish, for one, I would say.
Yeah, it's polished, but is that a good reason to do a thing? I don't know. Here's a big thing, though. There were promotional flash games for a bunch of Donkey Kong games.
Yes.
Diddy Kong Racing DS, Donkey Kong Country 3, Donkey Kong Country GBA or GBC. Milo mentioned it on Discord. I'm looking at that right now. Donkey Kong Jungle Climber, Donkey Kong King of Swing, Donkey Konga, Donkey Kong Double Dash. And I remember the Donkey Kong Jungle Beat website. Milo didn't mention this, but I remember the Donkey Kong Jungle Beat website, and I vaguely remember there being some sort of game there, but I could be just completely fabricating that memory. But that's like every Donkey Kong game for like a 10-year stretch, almost. Yeah. Are all of those DKU? I feel pretty confident in saying no.
No.
I don't see any difference between those and this, so I want to say no to this. But then again, I don't know what makes them different from Barrel Maze, so how do I accept Barrel Maze but not like 20 other Flash games?
Well, okay, yeah. So it's a slippery slope we're on right now, Jeff. And I will argue until I'm dead in the grave. And I plan to be cremated, so maybe I should say I will be arguing until I am pushed into that fiery cauldron, or crematory, whatever they burn your body in. That Donkey Kong Country Barrel Maze is an official Donkey Kong Universe game. I love that it exists. I think it's weird, but I think it adds to the lore. Yes, Donkey Kong lore. And I think it's just one of those things that I am proud to say is Donkey Kong Universe. I think there is a wide gulf of difference between that and the shit Flash games that would appear on official Nintendo websites throughout the aughts that some web designer just cooked up in an afternoon.
I mean, can we be real? These games are made by interns.
Right.
You know,
I mean, at the very least, Barrel Maze had a lot of effort and craft behind it. I mean, it wasn't like a brilliant game, but it had like almost 100% original art assets. It, I mean, not counting the Donkey Kong model in it, but everything else was basically original. And it certainly played better than all of those ones on the official Nintendo website. Now, but if there is ever a Flash game that came close to meeting Barrel Maze at that caliber, it's Aerial Challenge. And I definitely see the argument for it. This gets into much broader questions, though, of what constitutes a video game. What actually makes a game and not just an amusing electronic diversion.
So here's a question. I remember McDonald's Happy Meals used to come with little, like, basically Game & Watch-esque, like one-screen games on occasion. Right. They had some for, like, Sonic the Hedgehog at one point.
Absolutely.
And I feel, like, very confident that if one of those came out with Donkey Kong on it, we would not call it a video game.
Oh, I would.
A one-screen Donkey Kong Happy Meal toy would get a page on the DKU.
Like an LCD game?
Not like a legit Game & Watch game. I'm talking about a Happy Meal toy.
Fuck yeah, baby! Look. There was a Star Fox game. I think you could get it through Kellogg's cereal, and it was a little watch that you would have to like mail away the proofs of purchase, box tops, whatever for, and it was an LCD like almost like those Tiger Electronics games, like with single screen, but you controlled an R-wing. It was a Star Fox watch product. And I definitely would consider that a Star Fox game.
Okay, so now, first of all, I disagree entirely. I think it's dumb. Second of all, you seem so strongly to support the Happy Meal watch toy that, I mean, you have to call every one of these Flash games DKU. I mean, you have to. A Happy Meal LCD Flash toy is more of a video game, or not a Flash toy, a toy. A Happy Meal toy is more of a video game than a game that's officially released on Nintendo's website or a game that's officially licensed by Microsoft for Lunchables. If you want the LCD Happy Meal toy to be DKU, then we have to now we got to add every one of these Flash games to the DKU. Oh, and I'm not against doing that, but I want consistency. I want us to say if it's a video game at all, if it's even a little bit of a video game, it counts, or we have to set a standard and say these don't count.
But okay, but again, if there is an official Nintendo product, even if it's a Happy Meal toy, yes, even if it's a Happy Meal toy, then that is different than
it's not hosted on the official Nintendo if it's DonkeyKongJungleBeat.com and it's got a Donkey Kong Jumble Beat minigame, is that not an official Nintendo product?
But what constitutes a game and what constitutes a website? That's the question. A lot of those games on those websites were just barely anything different than moving around renders.
And so is a Happy Meal toy. The Happy Meal toys are nothing, but they're video games. I mean, I would say
they're essentially the same as Game & Watches, though.
No, but the difference is that Game & Watches had more functionality to them. They had a higher production value. They had better stuff. It's a Happy Meal toy. I mean, this thing is like total garbage. This thing costs pennies to make. And you're saying it should be a video game. I really don't see the fact that it's hosted in a browser makes it not a video game. I think it's pretty much the shittiest mini game ever, but it's a video game. I wouldn't want it to be DKU because I think it's dumb. But if you're going to say one dumb thing is DKU, we probably should say they all are. I mean, I just think that I don't see how the fact that it's hosted on a website makes it not a video game. A website is a video, and then the fact that they turned it into a game makes it a video game.
I mean, I think this is opening up a lot of very, very like deep arguments we could be making about the nature of gaming and what constitutes gaming, video gaming, electronic gaming, and this is definitely a slippery slope that
here's a question
on. Okay.
So, have you ever played a Wario micro game?
Yes.
If Wario micro games, they've got like an entire game full of those. And then if you were to take one micro game out of the game and remove everything else, and you just had the micro game, you'd still call that single entity a game, right? A video game. Like if they released a Wario game and it was only one micro game and that was the whole thing, it would still be a video game, right?
It depends on the format they release it on, quite honestly.
So you think that if they took that and they put it on a Nintendo DS cartridge, but if they took the exact same micro game and they put it in a Flash browser, it's not a game?
It's a game, but is it by our definition a video game? Like that I get the philosophical arguments you're making, Jeff. And here's the thing, like I don't have the answer, and I think
that's why the ESRB rule was so clean, even if I don't like it.
Oh, look! I'm not shitting on the ESRB rule as like I want to get rid of it. It is an important piece of validation, but it should not be all we have to go on either.
Right? Yes, I agree.
I feel like the absolutism in the ESRB rule is where I split from it. But I still view it as an important piece of evidence. And in the case of Barrel Maze, it was the tipping point. And yes, I've heard the arguments in favor of Aerial Challenge that Barrel Maze didn't actually have an ESRB rating because people have tried to find it in an ESRB website and they have not. They said that it was slapped on there because Donkey Kong Country Game Boy Advance had the same ESRB rating. But to that, I would say, okay, but there's no reference to Donkey Kong Country Game Boy Advance in Barrel Maze. So whatever, because I think it was designed to tie into it, but it was delayed. It didn't appear until later in 2003, and by that point, maybe Nintendo said, well, there's no reason to have a cross promotion now. It's just going to be this generic Donkey Kong game on Candy Stand. Candy Stand 2, okay, let's bring up CandyStand.com. CandyStand.com was essentially, basically, I think, if you'll pardon the term, it was dollar store Steam, essentially, of the day. before Steam, I mean, CandyStand.com was a destination you went to, especially in school when you had like a lunch break. If you wanted just to kill some time before smartphones, that's what you did. You went to CandyStand.com, you killed some time playing some games. So CandyStand.com, in the era Barrel Maze came out, had more standing to make a game than a random promotional website would.
So here's a thought.
Okay.
All right. There are video games that can be hosted on a web page.
Okay.
Do you agree, in theory, that something hosted on a web page can be a video game? Can you imagine it?
I think it would have to be a case-by-case basis.
Well, okay, because I'm just saying, there are, within web browsers, games, lots of games that have been released on web browsers, is Flash and everything. There's first-person shooters, there's RPGs, all kinds of stuff, full-fledged games. And I would call them video games because I think it's obvious that they are. Now, then if you take a WarioWare game that's a WarioWare is a collection of micro games. That whole collection is a video game. But then if you were to take one micro game out of that collection and release it separately, I would think it still is a video game. In fact, they've done that. They've released some of them on eShop, and I would think that counts as a release of a video game. But if you're so I think that the fact that it is micro in scale and in execution doesn't stop it from being a video game. And then my first example of the first-person shooter that's in browser, the fact that it's in a browser doesn't make it not a video game. So now you imagine something that is micro in scale and also in browser. What stops it from being a video game?
Sometimes context is key. I mean, you said they released some of the micro games on eShop. Sure, and I can play it on my 3DS or whatever. Great. Within that context, that is a lot more concrete than playing the same one on some web browser. I don't know. And as we go forward, this is the problem, Jeff. As we go forward, the definitions of what video games are will keep evolving, especially as we get more into VR and augmented reality. We're already there, essentially. It's just it really hasn't impacted our neck of the woods too much. So...
Well, and this gets into the weird thing where, like, promotional material itself kind of screws with our notions of the DKU. Like,
right.
Yuka from Yooka-Laylee technically made his first appearance in Tracky Train.
Right.
Which is stupid. Like, clearly we're still going to count Yuka as a DKU character, which is probably a discussion that is going to end up happening on another tribunal someday. But
we already had the discussion, Jeff. We already made Tracky Train DKU. We had this discussion on the first. Stop sniffing things! My God. I know you can't smell, but stop trying because you're just sniffing the wrong things and it's hurting your brain.
Maybe that's what killed my smell in the first place. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It makes you wonder if we need to look specifically at like promotional material and what if we want to treat it differently, because like a promotional Flash game for Donkey Kong Country GBA is so far from what I want to have to worry about, because it's made by an intern and there can be dozens of them, and in theory if we start giving them legitimacy, who knows what we'll have to end up covering as a result of that. The slippery slope argument. I don't know.
But the thing about Barrel Maze is it was much less of a promotional tie-in to DKC GBA than Oscar Mayer Lunchables presents Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts Aerial Challenge was for Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. This Lunchables game is essentially one long commercial for both Lunchables and Nuts and Bolts that you can so happen to interact with. Barrel Maze is much more of its own entity than this thing is. Now, should that disqualify it? Arguably, no. But again, I mean, it gets into what is a video game. Can an interactive commercial be a video game? Where is the dividing line here? Jesus, I don't know. And part of me wants to just say this is Donkey Kong Universe, because I mean, you fly into space and you're like destroying multiple space shuttles. And really that makes me think, holy shit. Like, is this why NASA abandoned the space shuttle program? Because they lost like 8 space shuttles in one day in 2008 due to a bear and a bird just callously destroying them? Like, this is some heavy, dark shit. And I want to know more about this. But then again, that would be ridiculous. But then again, this is all built on absurd notions in the first place.
I don't know. I think
it's like pulling out a thread. It's like pulling out a thread on a blanket or a quilt or something. If you pull on enough of them, the whole thing becomes unraveled. And I am pretty confident and pretty adamant that Barrel Maze should still be canon. Now, what we could do, Jeff, since we've been avoiding mistrials this entire episode, but maybe what we have to do is on the docket for the next tribunal, we're gonna have to relitigate Barrel Maze.
I like it. I'm into it. Let's do it.
And from there, then we'll reach a decision.
We can derive a maybe some sort of more concrete rule of thumb on Flash games in general.
Right. So you know what? I'm calling this one a mistrial. We will discuss it along with Barrel Maze in depth on the next tribunal.
Jello! And along with Smash Brothers on the next one. Yeah.
Oh, let's get to Super Mario Maker real quick.
Okay. All right.
Super Mario Maker. We've heard some arguments about Super Mario Maker that you actually physically transform into the character that the mushroom lands on. Like the cost. I just said costume. I kind of gave away the reveal there, but there are mushrooms in the game that transform you into classic Nintendo characters, including Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong. Right? So
yes, and when you transform into the character, you've got like a sort of like sound effects, like Donkey Kong music, sort of, which is cool.
Yes. Now the question is, are you physically transforming into the characters a la an Animal Buddy barrel in the latter DKC and DKL games, or is it merely a costume that Mario is wearing, a very elaborate costume that physically alters his form, but a costume nonetheless?
So, it's definitely a costume. The game says it's a costume. It turns you into Costume Mario. Costume Mario is a form of Mario, and there's various costumes. I think everything in the game related to the mystery mushroom makes it very clear that it's intended to be a costume, especially because if you take damage, you lose the costume and you turn back into Mario.
Yeah. No, in my mind, this isn't any different than Fire Mario or Metal Mario. And yes, those there can be variant clones of Mario. Like Metal Mario has shown up as his own character. Sure, but there's always like weird logic behind that. Like even if it's an aspect of Mario, it's still in its original game intended to be a singular version of that Mario, just transforming, augmenting his abilities with his transformation. Yeah, Master Hand can make a clone of him and make Metal Mario into its own entity, or whatever you want to use to justify Metal Mario running around in the sports titles, or what have you. But in this case, it's just another Mario transformation, and in this case, he's pulling a Kirby. He's mimicking the ability, well, maybe not the ability so much, but the physical form of other popular characters. In this case, much more in depth than Kirby ever gets. But yeah, Costume Mario is just another form of Mario. I think it's a pretty open and shut case.
There's only one other piece of evidence to the contrary that
okay.
I can. So the game has a bunch of like pre-made courses, you know.
Yeah.
So obviously the game is about making your own levels. There's some of them already in there, and some of them have a little bit of flavor text. They say like, and some of them are based around wearing a certain costume. So you start the level off as Mario. It gives you the mystery mushroom. You transform into Diddy Kong or something, and the flavor text on the level says something like, get Diddy Kong to the end of the level and beat it. And some people have pointed that out and said, well, look, it says Diddy Kong, so it's got to be legit. But I see that as a bit of in-universe role-playing. It's clear that Mario is wearing a costume because that's what everything attached to the Mystery Mushroom actually says. And even in those levels that have the flavor text, you still turn back into Mario if you get hurt and stuff. So, I mean, it's clear that the actual context of the universe that Mario is in right now is that Mario is in a costumed form, and he is role-playing as Diddy Kong because he's wearing a Diddy Kong costume.
It's similar to Kirby's Mean Bean Machine, where you've got like conflicting text sources, but because you have conflicting text sources, it kind of just throws out the entire notion entirely. Like it taints the pool, if you want to go with that analogy. In this case, we do have some concrete like explanations for what the costume Marios are. So this other text can't really override it or overrule it in any way. It's just, again, like you said, role playing. It's, oh yeah, Diddy Kong, wink, wink.
Right. And then I've also seen the argument presented that when you create your own level in the game, if you create a level where Mario is in the Diddy Kong costume, you could be intending that to be Diddy Kong.
Oh, okay. So players
now and they say, well, look, it's the developer's intent, quote unquote, because I developed the level. Well, now that's where I draw another argument against that is this. You can only create levels using the assets that are in the game, and Diddy Kong is not an asset that is in the game.
Right.
A Diddy Kong costume is in the game.
Right.
So even if you intend, and even then, I mean, your intention as making a game that it's about custom levels, it doesn't actually create canon. You know what I mean? Like the custom levels that everyone makes aren't all real. They aren't all canon. You know what I mean? So even if you intend it to be Diddy Kong, that doesn't make that level canon to the game or whatever. But anyway, you're not using Diddy Kong in your game because there is no asset of Diddy Kong in the game. Only a costume for Mario to wear. So yeah, it's pretty clear cut, I think.
It would be basically like me drawing Diddy Kong in Mario Paint and saying, see, Diddy Kong's in Mario Paint. This is DKU. It's the first DKU game. This is Diddy Kong's debut because I drew him in Mario Paint. Doesn't really work. It's a cool notion, but it doesn't really work. So
and also there is precedent for this. This function of the mystery mushroom is similar to something that is in Super Mario 64 DS. Cameron pointed that out in the chat, and also I was reading it on the Wikipedia page. But in Super Mario 64 DS, Mario can wear caps of other characters. And when he puts on their cap, he transforms into that character, and it actually changes his model. And he gains all their abilities. But it is still Mario wearing their hat. Like it's a transformation slash costume, so to speak.
It's him wearing their skin, much like I daydream about one day wearing Nick Prohl's. I mean, not anything creepy at all. What?
Yeah, just like that.
I guess I will pass down my verdict on this. See if Jeff lines up. I think it will. Sorry, Super Mario Maker is not DKU.
And for that matter, neither is the 3DS version no version of Super Mario Maker. It's two different games, and they're not. Neither one of them are DKU.
I know you want to table Smash Brothers discussion because you think it'll be long and heavy.
It's only it's not that it's that any amount of time that it is going to be long for me on account of I have to get up for work in like 6 hours.
Oh, who cares about work? This is work. This is your job now, Jeff.
This is my job. Yes. Send me some of that. Send me some of that Mondo Patreon fund.
I agree that Smash Brothers, like for me, it's an open and shut case, but it would be giving it the short shift. We really need to get into the intellectual debates why Smash Brothers is DKU. Right. So we will table that for next time.
I would be breaking down each game's intro movies and context of each game. One of them has dolls and one of them has trophies, and I'd be getting into the philosophy of empirical evidence versus freaking skepticism, and
we'd be talking about Indian in the Cupboard, that one Doctor Who episode. Yes. Yeah, we'd be talking about a lot of stuff. So,
we have references.
Yeah, with lots of like two references.
In the same way that this episode was like, it had Super Mario Odyssey as the main draw.
Yeah,
I think that we can do an episode where Smash Brothers is the main draw.
Oh, you don't think people will come to the yard for Snake Pass or Donkey Kong Country Barrel Maze discussion?
Well, I mean, we could do a whole episode about Snake Pass. It'll be actually a really nicely, pretty short episode, and everyone will love it.
We really just pissed in everybody's cornflakes on this episode.
I think that we have made it clear that I'm the one pissing on the cornflakes here, and
you have the bladder control issues. I at least can hold it in until I pee when other people start peeing. I'm like you know how when one person yawns, another person does it. That's the way I am with urination.
You really do seem to start peeing every time I talk. So yeah,
I do. I suffer from IBS and I suffer from incontinent bladder. So I'm a mess and I make a mess.
Yeah. Tip Top Jr. kept mentioning in his call about how you don't even post on the forum anymore. So it's a good point because now I'm the one who's got to go and face the music of all these things that people don't agree with us on. And that's okay. It's the life I chose. It's the life I chose.
I can get into the debate a little bit too. Yeah, but look, I don't want to ruin anybody's like end of the year like festivities. I'm sorry for putting a damper on people's holidays. The people who are really hoping for Super Mario Odyssey or Kirby's flicking the bean, the crusty old bean, whatever the fuck it's called. I'm sorry. I know you guys wanted that as part of the Donkey Kong universe. I know you wanted Super Mario Maker as part of the Donkey Kong universe. At the very least, you got a mistrial for Aerial Challenge. There's that fight can be had another day, and if there's more evidence that comes our way for Super Mario Odyssey or anything else, we'll have a new trial. But until then, I'm Hyle Russell. You're what's your name again?
It's Matt Corna.
We've ruined 2017 for you. At least it wasn't Carrie Fisher this time. You're welcome. And court is adjourned.
This has been a File 2 production.